In this recording, I don't know when I will upload this, maybe a few months from now, maybe a year from now. But in this summary, I want to go back to the subject of paranormal earthquakes. I've spoken about it in one of my videos. I have around 600 videos on this channel at the moment. I can't remember exactly which video it was. But alright, maybe in the future I have more videos on this channel, I don't know, but whoever's listening to this audio recording now, I'm speaking about paranormal earthquakes. First, I want you to imagine a real physical earthquake. When in the ocean, you have tectonic plates rubbing against one another, a shift can happen, a very small shift of maybe a meter or 20 centimeters. I'm using European metrics, so forgive me if you're using other measurements, but okay. You have a small shift in the ocean, but this small shift in the ocean is this small earthquake has side quakes that this causes, and this also causing movement in the ocean, and this is causing high waves to the nearby islands or to the nearby shores. So that's causing a tsunami. If an earthquake happens on land, then there's going to be a shift. You're going to sense it, and going to be after effects of the shift also. And if there are constructions that were built over there, like roads, bridges, or even towns, they may suffer damage. So you understand what an earthquake is, when it happens in sea or it happens on land. You can go to Google or to Bing or Yahoo search and you can look up videos and photos about earthquakes and the aftermath of it. So, you know what a physical earthquake is. In the spirit world, you also have a thing similar to earthquakes. I'll explain this. If let's say, let me give you an example. Let's go back in time to Ireland in the Middle Ages. Let's say that in the Middle Ages you had 4 kingdoms on the Irish island, and the Kingdom of England ruled over Ireland at the time in the beginning of the Middle Ages, and you had 5 of those Irish kingdoms. Let's say you had 3 of those populations that maybe formed like 800,000 people. They were against the kingdom in the northeast of Ireland, near what they call Belfast. Why? Because those people had easier access to Scotland and to Scandinavia, because in the early Middle Ages the Norwegian Empire became the dominant empire on sea. The Vikings sailed all the way to North America. They sailed to the Caribbean. They also sailed all the way to Asia. So the Norwegian Empire was dominant. So if you had cities that were located near Norway, they had an advantage. So let's say you had the Irish kingdom in the northeast that was quite wealthy, and all the other Irish kingdoms had to communicate with that royal house for them to gain access on sea, to sail towards Scotland and Scandinavia. That's just the way things were. But let's say that one day there was this tiny town in Wales, and this tiny town, it wasn't quite important. It wasn't important at all. It was just a small town with 200 people living over there, and sometimes you would have a sailor that came by just to visit the brothel, because they had a small brothel over there, and that was it. But let's say that you had a Welsh young man that imagined that this small town would become a big city. Now everyone around him laughed at him. I mean, that means the people of that town, and also the people nearby in Wales, because Wales existed as several principalities at a time. They also laughed at the whole idea. They didn't even knew who said it. But let's say that this guy, let's call him Peter, just for example. Let's say that Peter thought differently about it. Peter did not come from a wealthy household. His father was a drunkard and even left his mom when he was 2 years old. His mom had children with several other men. So he didn't come from a very respectable background. So because of this, people had built an accusation around Peter. And these accusations and these negative attitudes had constructed like a chain around Peter. Because that's what happens when people meditate evil upon you over and over again. They establish they establish paranormal patterns. I say paranormal because it's not something good. It's not from the Most High. It's not in agreement with the Holy Spirit. So it's paranormal. And these paranormal chains are unclean spirits that are attached to you. They are empowered by the negative energy that people had generated against you, and those unclean spirits now are holding you. They are like parasites holding on to you. They are around you all the time. They are also called familiar spirits or ancestral spirits. But Peter had these spirits around him. So wherever Peter went, those unclean spirits would cause other people to feel uncomfortable. Why? Because those other people also had familiar spirits, and the familiar spirits around Peter would communicate with the familiar spirits of them. And the familiar spirits that were around Peter would explain the construction that the paranormal construction people generated against Peter. And those other demons, because demons agree with one another, they've agreed with it, and they were acting out that paranormal agreement. Because demons need the validation of people in order to operate. This does not mean that demons cannot affect you without you without you give them consent. Even when you don't give demons consent, they can affect you. Why? Because they depend upon collective negative energy that humans generate. So whenever Peter went, those unclean spirits would cause this tension. And those other demons would cooperate, and people began to feel uncomfortable around Peter. People couldn't explain why, but they just acted upon their feelings. So they would reject Peter, begin to treat Peter badly. Now Peter didn't bother much with it. Peter had no understanding of the spiritual realm whatsoever. What Peter did have was Peter had an intellect, just like all people have. And Peter began to study the maps of Europe and began to study the developments that happened in Ireland and Scotland, and he figured out that, hold on a minute, Wales will become more important because the population growth it's higher here, while the population in Scotland is decreasing. That means that soon they will need people from the south of Britain. And most other people didn't even bother with what developments were going on, but Peter had this insight. Well, Peter had this paranormal construction around him that hindered him in his daily life. But this paranormal construction was not all powerful. Peter still managed to form friendships. He still managed to establish social contacts, even though it was hard for him because he always had this paranormal he had this paranormal chain that always haunted him. But here's the thing, those chains were validated by other people, because all those people that encountered Peter and they chose to hold on to that discomfort they felt towards him, they validated the paranormal chains around them. Because if those people would have realized, hold on a minute, I barely know this Peter, why am I acting to him like this? If people would have taken their responsibility and repented, they would have acted against the paranormal chain. And look, and Peter was smart. He was polite because he realized if you're polite, people tend to treat you better. But even if Peter was not polite, it still wouldn't have given people permission. It wouldn't have given people permission to be negative towards him. So it isn't just the people originally that fabricated this accusation, that generated this accusation against Peter. everyone that validated that accusation are also responsible. They also have invested in the paranormal chain. But hold on a minute. Peter one day sailed to Ireland, and he sailed back. Well, the people in that town were thinking, Peter's out of his mind, because they were invested against Peter. Then suddenly one day, after 6 months, Peter returned, and they thought, what happened, Peter? People were mocking him. But at the same time, there was this fortress being built in that town. And after a year, when the fortress was done, a lot of soldiers came around, and they built a small hedge around the town and around the environment. And then people were thinking, what's going on here? Also, the other princes and authorities in Wales began to ask what's going on in the northwest of Wales. And then they heard that there was this Peter guy from Wales that through merchandise he gained wealth and favor from the Vikings, and they decided to finance a construction for him. And within 2 years, that town in Wales became the most important town in the south of Britain. And it even became like this. It became that the economy in the south of Britain became dependent upon this city at the shores. Now, who had the vision that this town might become a very important city? Peter. Who were the ones that generated these paranormal chains around Peter? The people around him. And who validated those changes? Most of the people that met Peter. So all those people that agreed against Peter, when they heard that it was Peter that became the mayor, or let's say became the head of a small town, and that town became the most important town in the south of Britain, all other cities in the south of Britain had to deal with Peter for their income, because there were also famines in the south of Britain. When this happened, this shift happened, those people that invested against Peter, they became quite uncomfortable. What happened? A shift took place. The chains were broken. That means that everyone that had an investment in those chains would have to deal with the after effects of the dissolvement of those chains. In the beginning of this audio recording, I've spoken about material earthquakes in the sea and on land. In the spirit world, whenever you get free from paranormal chains, it's the same as if an earthquake happens. Things begin to move, things begin to shake. And there are going to be people that are going to sense the consequence of this shift. First of all, other evil spirits that may not even know you are going to sense that there is a shift. Okay, so in example of Peter was in Wales, and were people living in London who never even knew of Peter and the town people lived in. But those people, 6 generations back, they had a common ancestor that dwelt in Britain during the Roman times. And those evil spirits that went through the bloodlines, they knew those other demons. So when a shift took place in the spirit world, those other demons that were in London began to inform what's going on. And the demons started an investigation, and they found out, this Peter, son of Sylvanus in Wales, has been delivered. Because evil spirits are the first to notice that there's a shift that took place. Secondly, this shift is going to manifest in the material world. Because as I mentioned before, Peter's shift caused a paranormal earthquake. So when the paranormal earthquake manifested. There were all these disruptions that happened in people's lives. Some marriages were instantly had a lot of troubles. Um, some companies um, had delays in their shippings, in their orders. So in daily circumstances, there were disruptions because of Peter's deliverance. Well, because this is what you need to understand. Just like in the sea, things are connected, and on land, things are connected. In the spirit world, things are connected. If a change happens somewhere, it's going to affect things everywhere. It mostly is going to affect things around the place of the impact, just like with a material earthquake, is at the epicenter. That's where the shift happens, and it's around the epicenter, close, that the after effects are going to be the biggest. The same thing is in the spirit world, but it's going to have an impact everywhere, and most people are not aware of this. So Peter was this became this wealthy castle lord. He had his own castle, and he was not from a royal bloodline. He was not part of some secret society, but he had his own castle. He had his own servants also. But the fact that there was someone, the fact this shift that happened also caused wills to be relevant. It also caused people in France that traded with the south of Britain to pay more attention to wills. And this all caused envy amongst the people in Wales, because people in the north of Wales, they had more visitors. They became more important people in the south of Wales. Also, people in Britain became upset with it. So you had all these other consequences as a consequence of Peter's deliverance. Look, some of you who are listening to this may think, Rashid, your example is too far-fetched. It's not. That's how things are spiritually. All those other people that invested against Peter before his deliverance, they all had pain to deal with. Because the thing they didn't want to face, they have to face now daily. And look, when people don't like you, it's them having pain that they project onto you. Because it's far easier to blame the pain on someone else than to acknowledge that you're the one in pain. Because let's say that you have a box with cookies and there's a visit and you pass them around. In some countries, the unwritten rule is you pick only one cookie to leave enough for the others. But in places like China, they tell you pick as many as you want, because if they're, let's say, if they're gone, they're gone. So if you do this in, for example, Holland, people will only take one cookie, and you feel validated because this is how your parents brought you up. This is what has been validated by the people around you. So now you expect that validation from others also. If you go to China and do this, and people pick 4 or 5 cookies, you become offended. You feel offended. You take offense. Why? Because to you, this social fact is a natural fact, but it's not a natural fact. It's just a social construction. But because you have invested so much in this social construction, when it's not validated, it's going to shock you. Well, what do you do then? You need to give up. You need to acknowledge, okay, you need to acknowledge that it's just a social fact that you are holding on to, and that's it. But if you're not willing to let go, then you're the one carrying the weight, because you're now carrying the conflict inside of you, because people took more than one cookie. And the longer you hold on to this conflict, the more tension is building up inside of you. You're attracting more negative energy onto you. You're even going to attract demons onto you, and that pain is going to turn into hate. And that weight that you're carrying is going to cause accidents around you. It's generating a negative cloud around you, and it's going to affect other people. Well, those people in this parable that I've given to you that invested against Peter, they had their hates to deal with. It was not the fault of Peter, it was their own way of thinking that caused the pain that grew into bitter hatred. And here's the thing, they all began to wish harm on Peter, all began to hope that something bad would happen to Peter. Peter would lose his castle, that Peter would just disappear. But hold on a minute. Whatever would happen to Peter would not take away all the waste energy that they've generated all the time. So you're still going to be left with all the consequences. And when people realize, I'm talking about worldly people now, when they realize that they are in a no-win situation, if they admit that they have hate, then they have to admit that they are the ones that have danger. And then they will also have to explain why they have hatred. And if it comes down to they didn't like someone, then they also need to explain that. And they know very well that they can't justify it. They can't explain it. So if they have to be honest, that they need to admit it, they need to literally will be exposed to themselves, and then they will still have to go through all the trouble to be delivered. If they don't want to admit, if they don't want to repent, then they still have that waste that they need to deal with. And they've lied upon Peter, blaming him about things he didn't do. So now they have to keep on lying. Why? Because all the other people they've met later on, they've lied towards them about Peter. So if they need to be honest about, if they need to tell the truth now, those other people come to know you've lied to us. So now they will have to deal with that too. So when worldly people realize that they are in a no-win situation, and that the more they resist, the more they invest against something that it's only them that's left with all the garbage and all the tensions, they lose it. It's like there was this actor, I believe it was in the 1980s, he said, when people have nothing left to lose, they lose it. Now, I seldom take quotes from worldly people and use them to teach something, but this quote has a lot of truth in it. When people realize they are in a no-win situation, they lose it. 99% of the time they lose it. And if the target, the original target that they blame, is not available to attack, that hate is going to leak out onto others. That's the cause of much child abuse. That's the cause of homicide. That's the cause of a lot of sickness also, because when people don't have a target to leak out their waste energies, that those waste energies are going to affect their physical bodies. They're going to have physical sicknesses like cancer or bronchitis or I don't know, sexual transmitted diseases. Or they may leak out against their children. So now there's child abuse. Now you have traumatized children. Now so you have now a traumatized community. Such things happen. Now why am I giving you this example? Because I want you to realize that a lot of folks are only happy with you as long as you are chained. They don't want to go through you being delivered. And some people, when they notice that a shift happens to you, they will leave you. They will run away from you. Some of you have been through this. There were people you had contact with, either they were friends or relatives, or maybe you were even married to someone. And a shift happened to you. What? And now those people like the constant being around you. Here's why. I'm going to give a few explanations why this is so. It can be that someone is a wizard or a witch, someone deep into occult, and that they were the ones directly impacting your environment with incantation spells and all of that crap. And here's the thing, when you are delivered, all those stuff will return back to their senders. So if you had a wizard or a witch around you that acted against you covertly, and you are delivered, they know they are in trouble, so they will get the hell away from you. And they will also realize, hold on a minute, if you are delivered, it means that there is some big power behind you. Because most people are not aware of how the paranormal operates. They don't even know that the paranormal is there. So when witches and wizards do their things onto them, they think it's them or just that's the way life goes. That may be one reason. Another reason may be, just like with Peter in this parable that I gave to you, it can be that those people invested against you with their way of thinking. And now they have this tension, this conflict inside of them. And every time they see you delivered, it intensifies their pain on the inside. So now they can't stand being around you anymore because they don't want to face themselves. So they leave. And there's a third option. This one is seldom, but it can be. It can be that such people, they have not invested against you. None of that, but they have the understanding. They may not be literate in spiritual issues, but they have the understanding that a lot of other people don't like you. And they know that now that this shift has happened, those people that don't like you are going to be hurt by it. They're going to grow hatred because of it. And they will come after you. And that individual knows that, okay, if I'm hanging out with you, I'm a friend or a buddy of yours, and they're trying to come after you. If they can't find you, they will I'm the one around you, so I might be targeted. So that individual, because he or she's afraid, they may, even if they were good friends of yours, even if they were best friends, or even if it was one of your spouse, one of your kids, or your parents, they might decide to run away from you. Because they can sense that danger is coming. Look, paranormal earthquakes happen often. And people don't want those things to happen. They want things to remain the same and predictable. Look, I said it before. Sorry, it's late already, so forgive me if I'm not that fluent in my speech at the moment. Look, there are people that are only willingly to be around you as long as you are in bondage. And some of you, when you were in bondage and you wanted deliverance, you thought it's because I'm in bondage that your focus was in getting delivered or getting healed. Because you realized that there was a disruption happening with you. But hold on a minute, the moment you became delivered, you thought, okay, it's over, circumstances will become better. But you were delivered, but now you have more difficulties around you than before. So now you begin to think, hold on a minute, did Satan deceive me? Or did I miss the will of God? No, it's none of that. Your light disrupts their darkness. It disrupts those demons that are with them, and it disrupts their daily life that's based upon accusation and upon their antichrist way of thinking. It disrupts it. And people may not, sometimes people are affected by your deliverance, but they sense that whatever is going on with them has something to do with you, but they can't explain it. Look, the spirit world is real, and it's far more relevant than most people would like to admit. Just like Peter in this example I've given unto you, some of you have paranormal chains around you. Some of them are the result of you agreeing with what other people said about you. Some are because you yourself got involved in occult activities. That can be it. But most of you who have paranormal chains, it has to do with the chains that your great-grandparents had, your grandparents and your parents had, and through the generations, these chains have been passed over to you. Because you grew up with those people, you adapted their way of thinking, and with their way of thinking, there were spiritual enablements and disablements. And because their way of thinking was not in line with the Word of God, it was not in line with the Gospel, that's why you have a way of thinking, you have opinions and ways how you process emotions that are not in line with the world, not in line with the word, but are in line with the paranormal. And you are operating in that mindset, and this also causing things to have. This also causing tension around you. But many of you, it's not that you're lazy, because you're not. It's not that you have ill intentions, because you don't. It's just you have this paranormal chains around you. And that's why wherever you go, the same thing keeps happening to you. And you begin to think, what's going wrong with me? It's not you. It's something paranormal. You need deliverance. And listen to what I'm saying here. The moment you are delivered and you realize that people can't appreciate your deliverance, get the hell away from those people. I don't care if my way of speaking offends you. I'm going to say it one more time. Get the hell away from those people. I'm telling you. I'm going to give another example now, and this example is an example of something that happened in real life. There was this YouTuber, I forgot his name, maybe his name was Nick. He was a dude. He was like 22 years old, and he was from America. He came out of the hood. He wasn't what they would call Afro-American, and he had his job. He finished high school. He didn't have a lot of money. He just bought a camera with the money saved from work, and he made a YouTube channel and began making videos. This Nick, okay, I'm not sure if his name was Nick, but let's just call him Nick for now. Nick had a best friend, Robert. We'll just call him Robert. They grew up together. And Robert was basically the best friend of Nick. When Nick began making his YouTube channel, Robert was thinking, okay, dude, do your thing. When Nick reached over 5,000 views, Robert's attitude changed. Why? Because the way, the box that Robert had in his mind for Richard did not fit in with the consequence Richard had. Richard became popular on YouTube. He became one of the most popular people on YouTube of that in that state. I'm not sure whether it was Florida or North Carolina, but from that state he became one of the most popular and successful YouTubers. And people really wanted to watch his videos and listen to what he had to say. He did not make lectures. He was just ranting most of the time, but people wanted to listen to it. Then Nick went to a birthday party once, and at that birthday party, he was gunned down. He was murdered. When police came, they investigated the crime scene, and very quickly they found the suspect. Who was it? It was Robert. He shot and killed his best friend, Nick. And during the investigation, they found out it had to do with envy and jealousy. Now, Nick had a lot of haters and trolls that were trolling his videos on YouTube. Nick had people during his childhood that treated him badly. People children on the playgrounds that picked on him. Parents that thought, who's this Nick guy thinking he is? So he had people that had open hostility towards him. As I mentioned before, if you don't like someone, it has to do with pain that's caused by an attachment that you have, and you are projecting this pain onto someone else. So that some people didn't like Nick had nothing to do with Nick, but Nick had those people all the time. So you would expect that when an assault would take place, it would originate from those people that were openly hostile against Nick. That was not the case. And here's the truth. That Robert was never the best friend of Nick. He just hung out with Nick because Nick had social skills and Nick was able to bring Robert into contact with other people. Behind Nick's back, Robert would speak bad about Nick to a lot of people. Robert even began to say things like, that joker Nick is making videos on YouTube. He thinks people want to listen to all this ranting of him, to all that bullshit he's speaking. But here's the thing, those other people that agreed with Robert, when those people noticed that, hold on a minute, Nick has become one of the most relevant people on YouTube from this state. They also foresaw that, hold on a minute, Nick can also make money with the videos by monetizing them. When they began to notice all the potential Nick had, and their negative investment against Nick began to haunt them. And those people couldn't face that. And Robert couldn't fake it. He couldn't face it, I mean. And to go against Nick now and admitting that he never liked Nick would only work against Robert. So Robert lost it. He became homicidal and killed Nick. Now Robert is now in jail. He has a life sentence. But I've given you this example, and there are more of such examples. There are a lot of YouTubers that ended up dead. They were murdered. And most of them were murdered by people around them that they either grew up with or people that associated with them later on in life. And a few times, just only a few times, it were jealous stalkers from YouTube that came after people. But that was seldom. Most of the time it was someone around them. And it's not only with YouTube, you also have Facebook murders. And even when you go back in the time before social media, it happened that when someone became delivered and they had some anointing and they operated in it and they had blessed consequences, that they became on target, that they were endangered. I hope this summary I've made, I've also used illustrations in it to explain what I've summarized. A paranormal earthquake is both the shock and the aftershocks, or the after effects of you being made free. And there are going to be people that are going to leave you the moment you're delivered. Sometimes it's going to be people close to you, and it may hurt you, but that's the way it is. So understand this, and I'm going to close with this. Watch your people. I don't mean this in the paranoid way. Just watch your people. Okay, let's say you are at the workplace and you have some colleagues. You have some colleagues that you hang around with. They are your buddies at work. It can be that one of your buddies is now a target. Why? Because let's say you're a believer, you're a woman, a female believer, and you have this colleague called Meerte at the workplace, and Meerte is associated with, let me say, with an alumni from the university where she graduated, and she still has contact with that former fellow student. But that former fellow student, Nikita, has been delivered, and now people are now after Nikita. But because Nikita is not available, she's now away for a few weeks. The people have so much tension that they're so desperate to leak out that they have now thought, hold on a minute, Nikita always hangs out with this girl called Meerte. Maybe Meerte has something to do with it, or maybe not. But because people are so desperate, they're now wanting to leak out, to release the hatred. And now Meerte is a target. Meerte may not be aware of it, but you hang around Meerte and you see that Meerte has this sadness around her. She's not sad, but you sense there's a sadness coming after her. In this case, what you can do as a believer is that you can pray for that individual. You don't have to tell the individual you're praying for them. Please don't. Sometimes it's better not to reveal such things to people when you're praying for them. You can pray for Meerte to break all those chains around her. You can use the name of Jesus Christ, the blood of Christ. You can make symbolic prayers, but just pray, because it can be that Meerte would have that both, because listen, when someone has become the target of collective um of collective um hatred, let me say just hatred, when someone has become the target of collective hatred, the target is the fact that someone is targeted is also going to affect people around the target. So it can be that Meerte within a month has all kinds of accidents happening to her, and that she even ends up in a car accident and 2 other people are killed. And now you have more families in pain. But because you prayed for Meerte, she was a target, you were not aware of it. Now Meerte has escaped the harm that would befall her, and now the other people who also would have been harmed together with Meerte are not harmed either. So watch your people. I'm not saying to watch everyone, no, those that are around you, watch them. And sometimes, well, not really sometimes, it happens often, but I will use sometimes now. Sometimes it's people around you like that the devil will use to get to you. It can be that you have a colleague that you hang around with. He or she has no evil intent towards you. But because people can't get to you directly, they will use people around you to get to you. So whatever's going on, watch the people around you. Okay? Be alert. That being said, may the grace of the Most High be with you. Be at peace.